In the restless glow of a midnight screen, Emily's heart skipped a beat as she swiped through dating app profiles. Among the countless faces, one profile, subtly different with a vague yet unsettling smile, caught her eye. His name was Aiden, his bio cryptic, lost in digital shadows seeking connection. She dismissed it as another quirky online persona. Yet, unbeknownst to her, Aiden wasn't just a clever username. It was the alias of a man whose obsession would soon spiral into terror. The first messages were innocent, playful banter and curious exchanges, but soon Aiden's tone shifted. His texts became poetic, almost unnervingly detailed, as though he'd studied her every post, every like, every fleeting moment of her online life. Emily brushed it off as harmless charm. After all, who wouldn't appreciate someone who remembered the smallest details? But late at night, as she lay in bed with the moonlight filtering through her curtains, a disquieting thought crept into her mind. How could a stranger know so much? Aiden's messages turned darker. He began to hint at being everywhere, watching, waiting. "I see you, Emily," one text read. "Even when you're alone, I'm never far." At first she laughed nervously at the hyperbolic tone, but the smile faded when a stranger appeared on her social media feed, a blurry, half-formed silhouette in the background of one of her photos. Was it a glitch, or something far more sinister? Days passed, and the digital pursuit grew relentless. Emily started noticing odd coincidences: a car following her on her evening commute, mysterious figures in the rearview mirror, and the subtle sound of footsteps when she thought she was alone in her apartment. Her pulse quickened as she recalled Aiden's promises, the eerie certainty that he knew her habits, her routines, her fears. One autumn evening, the air crisp with foreboding, Emily left her apartment for a routine dinner with friends. The city, bathed in the glow of neon lights, seemed familiar and safe. Yet as she walked briskly down the sidewalk, her instincts screamed that something was off. In a narrow alleyway just beyond the comforting bustle of downtown, a dark shape loomed. For a split second, she thought she saw a figure watching her, a gaunt silhouette with eyes that glinted like cold steel. The vision vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. That night, after her friends had left and the apartment fell into silence, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. She locked all the doors and windows, yet the sensation persisted, a quiet, insistent presence lurking in the corners of her vision. Her phone buzzed, and there it was, another message from Aiden. "Don't be afraid, Emily. I'm only getting started." The words sent icy tendrils down her spine, and for the first time the playful intrigue curdled into paralyzing fear. In the solitude of that night, as the digital clock blinked relentlessly into the darkness, Emily made a decision. She would confront the reality behind these unsettling encounters. The dating app, once a harmless space for fleeting romance, had become a gateway into a nightmare, a digital web spun by a madman whose obsession defied all reason. The following days brought no relief. Instead, Emily's life began to unravel like the frayed edges of an old, forgotten tapestry. Every notification, every vibration of her phone became a harbinger of impending terror. Aiden's messages grew increasingly erratic, ranging from obsessive declarations to disturbing descriptions of events he claimed to witness. He wrote of following her footsteps, of watching from the darkness, and of a love that transcended boundaries. His words were at once poetic and grotesque, each sentence laced with an intensity that chilled her to the bone. At work, Emily found herself distracted by a constant paranoia. Colleagues noticed her haunted eyes and distracted demeanor, but she could offer no explanation, only a vague reference to feeling watched. The security cameras in her office began capturing inexplicable anomalies, fleeting glimpses of a gaunt, cloaked figure standing in empty corridors, always watching, never moving. One evening, as she reviewed the footage in trembling disbelief, she saw it clearly: a face contorted in anguish, eyes hollow and accusing, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as it appeared. Desperate for answers, Emily decided to confide in her best friend, Rachel, who was both pragmatic and fiercely protective. Over coffee in a quiet diner, Emily recounted the eerie messages, the unsettling sightings, and the inexplicable surveillance. Rachel's eyes widened as she listened, and when Emily showed her the phone messages, Rachel's voice quavered. "This isn't normal, Em. You need to tell someone, call the police." But even as they discussed the matter, the dread grew. That very night, while Rachel tried to comfort her friend over the phone, a loud crash echoed through Emily's apartment. Heart hammering, she grabbed a flashlight and crept toward the source. A window on the ground floor had been shattered. Outside, in the rain-soaked darkness, she glimpsed a figure lingering near the wreckage. The figure was too tall, too thin, a specter with outstretched arms and an unreadable expression. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she realized it wasn't a random burglar. It was the unmistakable silhouette of Aiden, or something that wore his face like a mask. The following morning, Emily's apartment felt invaded by the residue of last night's horror. Objects were moved, shadows clung to corners, and an oppressive chill seeped into every crevice. Determined to reclaim her sense of safety, she installed additional locks and even a rudimentary security system. Yet every measure seemed futile. The feeling of being stalked persisted like a curse. Days turned into a harrowing blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. In her dreams, she was pursued through endless corridors of darkness, always with the echo of Aiden's manic whispers urging her onward. Upon waking, she found subtle evidence that the nightmare was not confined to her sleep. Muddy footprints by the door, strange symbols etched onto the wall, and a persistent, inexplicable chill that no heater could banish. One particularly bleak evening, as rain hammered against the windows, Emily's phone buzzed with an incoming video message. With trembling fingers, she played it. The screen filled with the grainy image of her own apartment, shot from a distance, as if by an unseen observer. In the corner of the frame, the faint outline of a figure, indistinct yet unmistakably human, moved slowly behind her. The video cut off abruptly, leaving Emily paralyzed with terror. In that moment, every whispered warning from the past converged into one undeniable truth. She was not alone, and her pursuer was closer than ever. The digital world, once a source of connection, had become a labyrinth of fear and surveillance. Aiden was no longer an abstract idea or a simple online persona. He had stepped out of the screen and into her life, a relentless shadow determined to claim her entirely. The tension reached its crescendo on a cold, unforgiving night. Emily, now driven to the brink of madness, resolved that the only way to reclaim her life was to confront the terror that had haunted her for weeks. Armed with determination and a deep-seated fear that had morphed into a burning need for answers, she retraced the digital breadcrumbs left by her tormentor. It began with a cryptic message, a location pin sent via the dating app. The message read simply, "Come find me. The truth awaits." It was as if Aiden, or the entity behind the screen, was daring her to cross the final threshold. With no choice but to face the darkness head-on, Emily gathered her courage and set out into the night. The address led her to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place shrouded in urban legends and whispered secrets. The structure loomed like a mausoleum against the starless sky, its broken windows and graffiti-laden walls exuding an aura of decay. Every step toward the building felt like a descent into a personal hell. Inside, the warehouse was a labyrinth of echoing corridors and forgotten relics. The air was thick with dust and the stench of rust, and the only sound was the slow, measured drip of water from a broken pipe. Emily's flashlight beam trembled as she moved through the darkness, illuminating shards of broken glass and discarded personal items that hinted at past tragedies. In the far corner of the warehouse, she found a makeshift shrine, an altar of sorts adorned with photographs, personal mementos, and several unsettling items that she recognized from Aiden's profile. There in the center lay a diary, its pages filled with obsessive entries detailing a twisted infatuation with her. The words were scrawled in frantic, desperate handwriting, a testament to a mind consumed by obsession. As Emily pored over the diary, a sudden chill enveloped her. Footsteps echoed softly behind her, slow and deliberate. She whirled around, heart hammering, to see a figure emerging from the gloom. It was him, Aiden, his eyes glinting with a feverish intensity, his expression a grotesque mask of longing and madness. But in that moment something was off. His features shifted unnaturally, as if the man before her were a marionette controlled by a force beyond comprehension. "You came," he rasped, his voice a dissonant mix of adoration and horror. "I've been waiting for you, Emily, for so long." Emily's terror reached a crescendo as the warehouse lights flickered erratically. Shadows danced along the walls, and the temperature dropped precipitously. The diary slipped from her trembling hands, scattering pages that fluttered like lost souls in the storm of her fear. In a desperate bid to escape, she bolted toward the exit, but the warehouse seemed to shift and contort, turning corridors into endless mazes. Behind her, Aiden's voice followed, distorted and echoing, "You can't run from me. I'm in you now." As she dashed through the disorienting labyrinth, the building itself became a character in this macabre drama. Doors slammed on their own, and ghostly silhouettes moved just beyond the edge of her vision. Every turn led her deeper into a nightmare of claustrophobic terror and inescapable fate. Finally, in a final confrontation at the heart of the warehouse, Emily found herself in a vast, decaying atrium. Above her, a massive, broken chandelier hung precariously. In the center of the atrium, Aiden, no longer fully human, his eyes now burning with an otherworldly light, advanced slowly. His form wavered between man and specter, a twisted embodiment of obsession and despair. "This is the end," he whispered, the words both a promise and a curse. "You will never leave me." Summoning every ounce of willpower, Emily turned and faced him. "I won't let you control me," she declared, her voice quivering yet resolute. With a surge of adrenaline, she lunged for the diary she had dropped. In its pages lay the key to his madness, a confession of guilt, a story of a lost soul yearning for redemption. As she recited the words aloud, the oppressive atmosphere began to crack. The walls trembled, and the ghostly echoes of Aiden's delusion started to fade. A scream, not entirely human, reverberated through the atrium as Aiden's form shuddered violently. The figure before her splintered into fragments of darkness, dissipating like smoke caught in a breeze. The fluorescent lights above sputtered, and a cold silence fell. For a heartbeat, Emily felt as if the nightmare had ended. Then, as if in a final twist of cruel fate, she noticed something chilling, a small note pinned to the diary's cover in blood-red ink. "I will always be watching." In that moment, the realization struck her. The terror was not entirely vanquished. Somewhere in the labyrinth of digital shadows and human obsession, a presence lingered, waiting, watching, promising that this was only the beginning of a horror that would never truly end. As the warehouse's walls fell silent and the echoes of the past receded, Emily stepped out into the night. The rain began to fall, washing away traces of that haunted place, but the chilling note burned into her memory. She knew that even as she escaped that physical nightmare, the digital specter, the stalker born from the shadows of an online world, would forever haunt her. And somewhere, deep in the recesses of the web in her own mind, he would wait. Patiently, inexorably, until the moment fate drew them together once more.